Lotu-Iiga.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in the Imprest supply bill, as well as the appropriation bill for this financial year. Sir, it's an honour to speak in this Parliament, and may I just congratulate the Prime Minister before I begin, sir, on his address to the Australian Parliament yesterday. It was a historic speech, the first time the leader of this country has addressed the Australian Parliament. It was the 8th time a foreign leader has spoken to the Australian Parliament, and it is one of the reasons why this national government is delivering on its promises, sir, because of leadership. It's leadership just not of the Prime Minister, sir. It's also leadership from the Finance Minister, and it really is about the economic plan that this national government set out when it first took office in November 2008, sir. It is an economic plan that relies on the tax system being streamlined and made more effective in order to allow New Zealanders who are out there working and out there saving, allowing them to keep more of their real income. So, sir, real incomes after tax have never been better for New Zealanders since this government took office 2.5 years ago. Sir, some of the other points that have been made this afternoon, and certainly I'd like to reinforce with my speech, is one around regulations. And under the Labor government, the Clark Labor government, regulations and red tape and bureaucracy increased dramatically, to the point, sir, where I attended and spoke to the Small Business Conference last year with the Honourable Member Ross Robertson. And the one thing that small business owners certainly tell me in my electorate of Maungakiekie, but they also told me at this conference, sir, was that red tape and regulations had got out of control for small businesses. So that's what this government has addressed in its 2.5 years, sir. It's addressed the red tape, it's cut the red tape, and there have been bills around regulations which the Honourable Member Rodney Hyde has introduced. It's currently before the Commerce Select Committee, and those are the types of regulation cutting exercises that this government is becoming more and more well known for. Sir, in these hard times of financial hard times, the government has been committed, though, to infrastructure spend, and this budget has demonstrated that commitment. And it demonstrates the commitment to not just build roads, but build on our plan around broadband delivery, build on our plan around building of schools, building of roads and hospitals, sir. And we all know, even the Labor government or Labor opposition would concede, sir, that infrastructure spend is the type of spending long term that will increase our economic growth rates, that will increase productivity in this country, that will provide better jobs and opportunities for our communities, sir. And so infrastructure is one of the key cornerstones that this national government has put in place around its economic plan. Sir, it's also about innovation and trade. And we know that the Trade Minister, the Honourable Tim Grosser, has been one of the hardest working ministers, negotiating free trade agreements throughout the world. And, sir, that has resulted in exports increasing. We've heard this afternoon that the current account surplus for the first time in many years. And I asked the member, Marianne Street, what happened under the Labor government where we had 5 consecutive years of export contraction. Let me repeat that for the member. 5 consecutive years of export contraction. Because, sir, under the Labor government, government spending and growth in the government sector crowded out private sector investment, crowded out exports, and crowded out this economy, which had been travelling so well throughout the 90s under the national government. Sir, it is also, this budget is also about government services and making more effective savings in government bureaucracies. And, sir, we estimate in the next 3 or 4 years that we will get savings of just under $1 billion. Let me re-emphasise that, just under $1 billion of government savings, government services savings. that had been so bloated under the Labor government, that had expanded threefold. And so, sir, this is about making government services more effective, but also delivering more to the front line. And let me just elaborate on how we're delivering those services to the front line. Because we campaigned, sir, in 2008 on bringing about more effective services in the front line. So it was about more nurses. It was about more police, and we've seen that in South Auckland, sir. We've seen what more police on the streets of South Auckland has done to crime rates in that area. And we've seen the impact that it's had on our communities in South Auckland. People that feel safer, people that feel more secure in their living environments and their working environments. Sir, that is what frontline services and an increase in government spending on the front line delivers to our communities. Sir, it's also about education. And this government in the last 2.5 years has stood for national standards. It stood for standards in education, whereby children and their parents understand what the standards are that are required, and if they do not achieve those standards, the types of resources or the types of learning environments and resources that will be required to meet the standards that are expected of our children throughout this country, sir. So national standards, skills, training and the like are very much part of this government's agenda in order to expand our economy but also provide for our children going forward, sir. So, Mr. Speaker, in terms of infrastructure spend, this government, as I've already said, has put a vast amount of money into ultra-fast broadband. $942 million will complete the government's funding commitment, and $28 million will connect fibre to schools across the country. Sir, we've also seen in health and education the type of spending that will be more effective on the front line. We are, sir, looking at $18 million for 40 extra medical training places. And we also have a bonding system whereby our young and our bright and those that have recently graduated in nursing and in medicine are better able to stay within the country rather than go overseas. And that's the sort of bonding and realising of their potential within our work environment in New Zealand. But schools, sir, have had an increase in operational and capital expenditure over the last 3 years. And I'm particularly proud of our national government in spending $550 million for early childhood education, particularly focused on those children that do not access early childhood education. And we're talking specifically here, sir, about Māori. We're talking specifically here, sir, about Pacifica children, and we're talking specifically about those high needs children that do not have that chance in life, that start to life that is just so important in early childhood education. And this government is supporting the construction of many early childhood centres in those high needs areas, sir. And I attended one opening with the Minister of Pacific Island Affairs, the Honourable Georgina Tehuhu. It was in Mangere, a place where I grew up in South Auckland. And sir, the delight and the joy that you saw in the children's eyes and their parents' eyes when they felt that their needs were being met and that the funding for their early childhood centres to not just get early childhood education but language education in their respective Pacific languages, that, sir, is a victory for this government, and it's a victory for those that are in high needs areas. So, sir, I reiterate, this government has a plan, and it's a plan that has certainly about promoting jobs and opportunities. It's about promoting our frontline services. It's having education and skills training in place in order for our youth to be better promoted into jobs and opportunities. It's about infrastructure spend and the long-term goals around economic prosperity and around economic growth that the Labour Party sadly do not understand. And, sir, I support, obviously, this budget. It is one that in these straitened times, these difficult times, is one that is prudent but also invests into the future.